Welcome into the Cine-Siblings podcast deep dive, a podcast where two brothers and sometimes a guest pick a great movie that they love and go deep into the themes and everything in between of the film. I'm Ian.
I'm James.
And Jamie, we have a guest today, and you introduce him.
All right. So, a fellow English teacher, but also a Marine Corps veteran, comes to us today, hailing from all over the country, but most recently Mandeville, Louisiana. And sitting to my side here is Joshua Jones.
Hello, gentlemen.
How's it going, bud? I haven't spoken to you in a little while.
It's been a while, yes. Life is crazy. The world is upside down, and I'm just enjoying a good brew and ready to talk some film.
Awesome. Jamie, what movie are we talking about today?
Today we are talking about Saving Private Ryan, which hit Ian's number one World War II movie draft. It is an excellent film. But one thing that we do want to note is that because it is rated R, this podcast will be using rated R language. We do try to keep it family friendly, but when the movie's not, we're not.
Hell yeah. Right. So this movie was my number one on the World War II draft, but it's also like in my top five movies. You know, they tend to fluctuate depending on my mood, but Saving Private Ryan came out in 1998. I was way too young to watch this film, but I watched it anyway.
You were 9 years old.
Yes, sir. It's, of course, directed by Steven Spielberg, starring Tom Hanks, Tom Sizemore, Edward Burns, Barry Pepper, Giovanni Ribisi, Adam Goldberg, Vin Diesel, Jeremy Davies, and the ever-lovable Matt Damon as Private Ryan.
Lots of cameos too, though.
Yeah, there are a lot of cameos as big, giant, epic war films tend to do. Just a quick synopsis. Following the Normandy landings, a group of U.S. soldiers go behind enemy lines to retrieve a paratrooper whose brothers have been killed in action. How many brothers? All of them. All three. There's 4 Ryan brothers, correct?
Yeah,
it's
that's
got
my understanding.
It's got a 91 on Metacritic. It's got an 8.6 on IMDb. Rotten Tomatoes critic score is 93% with the audience score of 95%. And just seems to me universally beloved film.
Yep, I can't argue with that. I don't actually remember the first time I saw this film, but I think as with most people, that the opening scene is memorable, to say the least. I think it's one of those things that it doesn't ever need to be redone, because
No, for sure not.
It's just brilliant, horrifically brilliant.
Yeah, for sure. So, Josh, any opening thoughts on the film?
Yes. Jamie just brought up a great point. Not remembering the first time he saw it, I actually remember exactly every moment of the first time I saw it. I was in the Marine Corps. I was about 2 years in, and I was actually a newlywed as well. We went to a date, and this was the movie we saw after dinner, and everything was fine until the soldiers got off the boats, and then the bullets started coming down range, and she spilled half of her drink on my lap. She dumped half of the almonds on the floor, and the date really went badly after that. And being a young Marine, I don't think I handled it very well.
Wow, that's an incredible first time watching this movie. I can remember. I don't think I might have seen this in theater, but I don't think I actually saw it in the theater. I think I saw it when it came out on DVD with a friend of mine who had seen it multiple times in the theater. And man, he had like surround sound, and it was just bullets flying around your head. This opening scene, and we watched it on blast. Like I tend to watch movies on blast all the time in my own house. But yeah, well, y'all ready to get into the film?
Let's do it.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, Saving Private Ryan, it opens with an American flag. It's kind of distorted by the sun, and we get an old man and his family walking through the grave sites at Normandy. Of course, this sort of feels out of place at first, but I think Spielberg puts it in here as a sort of war doesn't end when the war ends. It doesn't end when you come home. It sticks with you forever. And you get endless crosses, a few Stars of David plots throughout, just as reminders of all those who were lost in the battle. And we cut to June 6, 1944.
I want to make a point here about the cut. You have
Go
all
ahead.
these crosses, and they're white, they're stark, it's well lit. And the cut to D-Day, to June 6, 1944, it cuts to those dragon's teeth, those and it's
Hedgehogs.
It's in the silhouetted black, and they're like these twisted, distorted crosses. It's like they're the same sort of thing in that they are grave markers in so many ways, but in a kind of an opposite, less peaceful sort of way. There's something there, and I think that the cinematography, the juxtaposition between those two, the white and the black, is just very, very well done.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, another part of that transition, you have the idea that this old man, this old soldier, is walking through the cemetery, and you can see his family behind him. It's a beautiful day. It's sunny. It seems like it's calm, but you can sense the inner turmoil, the war within him. And then you flash into the Higgins boats, coming to the beach, and you can see everybody. You can see Tom Hanks' hand shaking. You can see people doing that last moment preparations, throwing up over the side of the boats. So once again, it's not quite there yet. It's still kind of calm, but yet you can see the tensity that's coming along the lines of it's about to hit. Shit's about to hit the fan.
Yeah. So June 6, 1944, Dog Green Sector, Omaha Beach is what we get on screen. And like you said, Captain Miller, Tom Hanks' character, shaking as he drinks from his canteen. Ben, they're puking. He barks some orders. And this scene is, at least from what I can tell and what I've heard from veterans in the war, this is the closest thing to the real thing that we've gotten in film ever, and probably we'll never see anything done like this again. And man, when that gate opens on the Higgins boats and the bullets start flying, it's intense. You immediately, your stomach drops. That's like the only way I can describe it, is you see in all these boys, these young men, boys, get mowed down by these German MG-42s. And the scene is just so mesmerizing. And as far as war films go, I don't think it has any rival here.
No, and I mean, even with the draft we did of World War II films, if we were drafting best scenes, this one absolutely wins, hands down. The other thing about this is, we've talked about horror movies before. And one of the reasons I have the difficulty with some horror movies is I like to try to put myself in the protagonist's shoes. And this beats out horror movies for the kind of fear that it instills if you try to empathize with these men who are storming these beaches. I mean, it's absolutely, utterly terrifying.
Yeah. And Captain Miller, obviously, seems to be our main character. He makes it ashore. We hear the sound cut out. It's sort of muffled. So this is kind of a tell that something, maybe his hearing's off. I'm not sure. A flamethrower explodes and he's covered in blood as he just watches the carnage unfold around him. And he snaps out of it, and they kind of the soldiers kind of begin to move up their seawall with the orders from Captain Miller. And he's trying to save men, and they get blown in half. And finally, they make it up to the seawall, and we're introduced to some of our band of brothers, our group, Mellish, some of his guys, Mellish, Ryben, Caparzo, and the medic who's trying to save some wounded before they're killed.
That's
while
Wade.
he's working on them, Wade. Yeah. And we're introduced to our resident sniper, Jackson, Barry Pepper, as he bring up some Bangalores to clear the path for them so that they'll have defilade, which Bangalores, defilade, they're kind of military terms or equipment that we don't, as a layman, don't really know what it meant at the time. And definitely as a viewer, you didn't know what that meant. So you got any insights for us, Josh?
Well, the biggest thing I want to talk about for this scene, I was talking to Jamie earlier, and unlike any other war movie that I've ever seen, this one's kind of backwards, where it just throws you in the midst of probably one of the biggest battles our country's ever faced. And it starts right in the middle of the action, or right before the action. So you go from this old man in the cemetery into total hell right away. People are losing limbs. People are getting shot. People are dying large numbers at a time. We have no exposition. You have 30 minutes of film, of intense, adrenaline-driven film that really shakes you emotionally, physically. And then, of course, as they take that hill, we start to meet our characters, as you mentioned. You get that 30-something minutes into the film. There's no other war movie that does that, to expresses that much carnage before you even get to know anyone's name.
Right.
And that time period where they're storming the beach as well, the camera angles, I would love to talk about that for a minute, because I've never seen another film have so many different aspects to the same viewpoint of a battle. You get, of course, the hidden cameramen. Most of these people in World War II did not survive. A lot of the footage we have is very limited and it's on the outskirts of the actual battle, because most of these people that got off the boats died instantly or quickly.
Right.
So you get the invisible cameraman, and then you get like a first shooter Doom type video game with Tom Hanks' character. You're actually seeing what he sees, and then it reverses itself from the Germans onto what the Americans are doing from the Germans' viewpoint.
And there's one shot that I really want to mention, and it's from the boat looking up at that German bunker, and it looks like this giant, horrible face, like this awful giant sentinel, and it looks completely insurmountable, and it's terrifying, and it's just that one. It's a very short shot, but it stuck out to me. On rewatching?
And what about the shot where we get from the Germans' point of view of just from that MG-42 nest, and they're just mowing down people trying to come out of that Higgins boat?
The only thing that's standing in your way is not enough ammo.
Yeah. And because I believe the MG-42 runs out of ammo, so that's why only reason they stopped shooting at that boat. So moving on with the film.
But we did need to define defilade, because that gets used a bunch of times in here.
Especially at this beginning battle. Go
Josh?
ahead.
Well, that was a term that I thought about today, of course, when we spoke about it. And I had to make a wild guess to see if I remembered it correctly, but it means to stand your ground, to protect a position, to protect a place, maybe a convoy vehicle from the enemy.
Right. And it's
like with hard cover.
Yeah, it's a place that they can protect, because the enemy can't see them there. It's basically cover.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
All right. So moving on with the film, they're trying to kill one of these machine gun nests, and he's, all right, we can edit this, but whatever. All right.
Wait, hold on. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So they're trying to clear this machine gun nest, and they're seeing what lies around the corner. He gets a little sweet bubble gum on the bayonet and a mirror, kind of peeking around, which I thought was always sweet. They're just
that's
they do
always
whatever
good.
they do whatever's necessary to
Little
get the
MacGyver
job done
action.
here. Captain Miller sends out his sniper as bait, but not before standing as bait for his soldier. That I always thought that was a good scene, that he's willing to risk his life to give his men cover as a sort of thing,
Mm-hmm.
And Sergeant Horvath, who is played by Tom Sizemore, said, "Captain, your mother would be very upset if she saw you do that."
I thought you were my mother.
Yeah. Love it. All right. So we cut away to two chaplains who are praying over the dying on the beach. And I thought this was poignant because we cut back to Jackson praying for help as he shoots other men with his sniper rifle, which we will continue to see him do in the film. And I figured this was purposeful to cut between these two prayers.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you look at the Psalms, and I don't know if he is quoting the Psalms or not, because I didn't actually do that level of homework. I was doing stuff more analytically, but there are a lot of Psalms in Scripture that have to do with facing and triumphing over enemies, over the wicked. So this is not untoward. I don't see it if he's quoting or if that's just how he's praying. It's rather scriptural to do so.
Cool. Well, the Germans do begin to surrender here, and I mean, we're cruising through this opening sequence and probably not doing it justice at all. I mean, we talked about how incredible it is, and
you can't do this justice without watching it.
All right. Steven Spielberg says that he didn't storyboard any of it. That they just went to film and they just started doing stuff, and it sounds like, I mean, you're just throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks. I'm curious to see if they filmed things that didn't make it into the movie.
I actually looked at the original script, and it does. The original script has the Rangers like scaling a cliff,
Kind of like Longest Day.
Yeah, it's more of that scene rather than one of the like beach landings like that.
Yeah.
So, but everybody got brought to Omaha was a particularly bad one because that one was not really the beach they were supposed to land on precisely.
Yeah.
So
they had a lot of that stuff going on.
Yep.
So Germans begin surrendering as they know that they've lost, and the Americans begin to take the area. Two Nazi soldiers in particular I want to talk about start surrendering, holding their hands up, and they're speaking to the American soldiers as they kill them and sort of mock them. And look, I washed for supper. These two German soldiers who they killed were actually speaking Czech, and they were saying, "Please don't shoot me. I am not German. I am Czech. I didn't kill anyone. I am Czech." And that's what a rough translation. And apparently members of what the Germans call the OST East Battalions, men mostly Czech and Polish, taken prisoner in the Eastern European countries invaded by Germany and forced into the German army. Sort of like conscriptions or whatever.
Yeah, they were conscripts, and so they're not really even German soldiers pressed into the German army. And that's that this whole scene, and it's not translated what they say. You really don't know. And it's like, this is one of those things that you only really catch on reviewing and people analyzing the film. and you don't even feel like, you don't feel particularly good about when they shoot them and you go, well, they were German, whatever. And then when you learn more later, it's like, oh man, those dudes were right. They were not like trying to, they didn't have a choice. And that's really troublesome to think about. And that's one of the things that this movie, I think, starts to touch on to some degree, although it doesn't make it the central point. It's about the idea of what war does to people in the psyche, and how it changes you and how it makes you worse and not like you would be otherwise. And I mean, you can say that about any experience, but war has a much more profound effect on people.
Yeah. And right. So Caparzo, who is Vin Diesel's character, he finds a Hitler Youth knife here. Mellish is sort of torn up about it, saying, and now it's a Shabbat Chala cutter, right?
Challah. It's challah
So,
bread.
right. So, no, it's just Shabbat. Yeah. It's a braided bread used for their holidays, right?
Well, mainly, I think even just a Shabbat meal.
Yeah. All right. And as they sort of take over, they've won the battle. It's in quite a view. Yes, it is. All right. So the whole Omaha Beach battle was filmed in a sequence over a 4-week period, moving the action up the beach, shot by shot, day by day. And like I said, Steven Spielberg claims none of it was storyboarded in advance. He actually held and operated the camera for a lot of the shots in this thing. The scene cost $11 million and involved up to 1,000 extras. Some of them, which were our Irish Army Reserve, and 20 to 30 of them, of the extras, were amputees issued prosthetic limbs to play soldiers who had limbs blown off. Talk about an underserved community getting some time to shine here.
I was also thinking about the Irish Army Reserve. I think we just did a movie in Braveheart where they had a lot of them playing both English and Scottish soldiers. So
yeah, that's sweet. Sorry.
Yeah, the other thing I thought of was, $11 million with the price of ammo. That's it would probably be quite a bit more nowadays.
Yeah, you're talking 11 million in 1998. So yeah, it's definitely going to be more.
All right, and then we get the kind of just the desecrated beaches, bloody water. Camera floats over to a dead body with the name Ryan S printed on its pack, and we cut to the home front. All the women typing out each death, narrated by men sending their condolences to mothers of dead soldiers. This is kind of the washing clean of the horrors of war for those back home. You don't want to tell. You're not going to tell all these mothers that they didn't even make it off the boat. Most of them, that they died a hero. And we get a woman who realizes something, and she's kind of running around, and she finds 3 telegrams, and she realizes that the mom is going to receive 3 telegrams that 3 of her 4 sons have died. And we get General George C. Marshall, United States Army Chief of Staff. We get a Bryan Cranston cameo here as a one-armed general, I assume.
Mm-hmm.
And Bryan Cranston kind of pleads the case of the Ryan brothers and explains what has happened, and why they were split up after the Sullivan brothers died on the Juno. Anybody know the history of the Juno, the battleship? I'm pretty sure the Juno was a battleship that all the Sullivan brothers were on when it sank, and the mother had to get all of the telegrams for her sons
Right.
because they all died all at once.
Mhm.
Well, and the whole story is actually based on something that happened after that. Um, and there were multiple brothers who were killed in different um, actions. I believe it was actually in the Pacific Theater, or at least one of the brothers was. And they brought the last brother home, but then they found out later that the brother who was assumed KIA or killed in action was really MIA, and they actually found and rescued him,
Hmm.
and they were able to bring him home. So he did get to survive. So that's kind of what it's based on to some extent, but not. It's kind of like a more of a spiritual and an inspiration for the story.
Right. And we get Dale Dye, who is our Hollywood military expert, who basically shows up or has his hand in almost everything military wise. Basically says that there's no way we can know where the hell the fourth Ryan brother is because their or divisions were scattered to hell, and they were. And if you've seen Band of Brothers, we get a more in-depth look at that. And then General Marshall reads a letter to Mrs. Bixby in Boston. And you guys want me to read it?
You give the highlight.
Well, it's I'll just read it. How about that? We can edit it out if we need to. I've been shown the files in the War Department, a statement of the Adjutant General of Massachusetts that you are the mother of 5 sons who have died gloriously on the field of battle. I feel how weak and fruitless must be any words of mine that would attempt to beguile you, from the grief of a loss so overwhelming. But I cannot refrain from tendering to you the consolation that may be found in the thanks of the republic they died to save. I pray that our Heavenly Father may assuage the anguish of your bereavement, and to leave you only the cherished memory of the loved and lost, and the solemn pride that must be yours, to have laid so costly a sacrifice upon the altar of freedom. Yours very sincerely and respectfully, Abraham Lincoln. So
Why don't
the
you
Bixby
cut in the quote?
All right, whatever. Yeah, that sounds good. All right, so the Bixby letter, which was featured here, was actually inaccurate. The War Department incorrectly informed Abraham Lincoln about the fate of Mrs. Bixby's sons. 2 had died in battle, and the others eventually survived the war. And it's not clear whether Mrs. Bixby's story about her sons was born from error or exaggeration, and why the War Department had failed to correct the report based on their own records. I thought that was interesting that they included it, but
It is interesting. The thing is that was never really updated. So the general could even be working on insufficient
true.
information. So you make decisions on the information that you have, not necessarily the factual information or the quote unquote the real story. And also, you're making a movie here, so don't let facts get in the way of a good story.
But yeah, this is what he uses to say the boy's alive, and we're going to send someone to find him, and we are going to get him the hell out of the air. And we cut to the beach and Captain Miller, and he explains, he's explaining his last mission to a superior, which is a major, I believe, and he gets his new assignment.
Yeah.
And he explains his mission to his sergeant, and it's like, you took away your company. He said, it wasn't my company, it was the Army's. Well, that's what they told me anyways. And here we meet Upham. He's a French and German. It's played by Jeremy Davies. He's very kind of squirrely kind of guy. He's a French and German translator. I think he's a typist. He's normally a non-combatant. He makes maps and he translates. He says in the film, He's obviously clumsy and skittish. And
we got this guy in Fury too. Not the actor, but like we got the typist who gets thrust into this military action that he's really not prepared for.
yeah, Logan Lerman plays that in Fury, I think he plays a better sort of part there because it's his story.
Yeah,
in Fury.
True.
I mean, I'm not going to spoil the movie, but it's his story. And this is Upham is a main character, don't get me wrong, but this is not his story.
Yeah, and Corporal Upham actually is a very important type of stereotype, especially for in the military. Every unit has a Corporal Upham, someone that didn't quite understand what he was getting himself into.
Yeah.
And he's there to represent all of those qualities of the everyday guy who doesn't need to be there. Once he finds himself there, he doesn't quite know what to do. And so he is a bumbling idiot or a fool at times, and goes along with the group. And as we go through this discussion, we'll discuss that more, but he becomes extremely important to express those ideas as the movie plays out.
Yeah, and he's also, when you write a narrative, and you're trying to involve your audience or your reader into a world in which they're not familiar, you need, or not necessarily, but one of the ways to explicate this world, to give a proper exposition, is to have a character who's a bumpkin, who doesn't understand the world and who needs it explained to them. This is right, because that character is you. You're not from the world. It's like how the hobbits play in Lord of the Rings. It's like they don't know stuff, and they need to have this world explained to them. So Corporal Upham in here is that character for us, so that, and he's got some of these novel idea or these cliched ideas about the military, and following orders, and they're kind of like, you're an idiot, you don't know, you haven't fought like we fought.
And we get some nice shots of the beach, but then this cut to them moving on, and this is a shot of the film with the silhouetted squad coming up the hill in sort of a V formation, and we get Upham trying to make friends with his new squad, and they're more than a bit abrasive here.
Yeah.
And
this is one of my favorite scenes in the whole film.
Yeah, I mean, it's so good. But this is where you really get to know some of your characters. We're introduced to them in like Josh said, we're introduced to them in the chaos of storming a beachhead, and we don't really know them yet. But now we're starting to get to know them here. And I think it's Ryman who says, what's the sense in risking the lives of the 8 of us to save one guy? Yeah. And this is the crux of the movie, right? And we get the nice, what's Fubar? And then, it's German. Well, I've never heard of that.
Yeah,
this will be a thing that kind of runs through. It's a running gag throughout the film. Which Steven Spielberg is the master of a running gag. It's just enough.
They never tell you what it is either.
Yes, he does.
Does he?
At the very end, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Before the last battle.
But you get the idea of what it is anyway. You don't really need it explained to you.
Right.
This whole thing, this whole scene where they're really discussing the whole preposterous nature of the mission. And it's nice that it's addressed by those carrying it out, not people looking in on the outside or anything. Like if you've forgotten this scene, you might remember the film and think, oh yeah, the whole premise of this thing is ridiculous. But it's the central point of the film, that the whole thing is ridiculous. And it really brings up this is really introducing the central theme of how much is one life worth. And so, I mean, this scene's it's got a lot of good dialogue. My favorite one is when they're griping about the mission. And I got quotes, and we can insert the thing here.
Yeah, and gripes go up, not down. You gripe
And
to me, I gripe to my superior officer.
right.
I love
You know,
that.
yes, I don't gripe to you, Ryben. I'm a captain. There's a chain of command. Gripes go up, not down, always up. You gripe to me, I gripe to my superior officer, so on and so on and so on. I don't gripe to you. I don't gripe in front of you. You should know that as a ranger. And the thing is he goes, I'm sorry, sir, but let's say you weren't a captain and maybe I was a major. What would you say then? And I love this. He says, well, in that case, I'd say this is an excellent mission, sir, with an extremely valuable objective, sir, worthy of my best efforts, sir. Moreover, I feel heartfelt sorrow for the mother of Private James Ryan and am willing to lay down my life and the lives of my men, especially you, Ryben, to ease her suffering.
I
And
love him. I love him. He's the
yeah.
best.
And yeah, that's what Caparzo and Mellish, in the background cutting up. And
Yeah,
like
this shows.
Go ahead.
This shows just that they do respect their superior officer here,
Right.
and they do generally love him in
Yeah.
a lot of ways, that they believe in his leadership.
And I've used this in my professional life when I've been like the department lead. And it's like, I find it useful, and you can, you do gripe up. Griping down does nothing but depress people and make people think that you're ineffectual. People with less power than you can't help fix your problems, not usually anyway. And griping up and then supporting the decisions that are ultimately made above you. You have to support those decisions to your inferiors, and that's usually the best course of action in order to make things work the way they're supposed to. Superiors, if you gripe down, you're undermining your own leadership. And so this is really good here to see that Captain Miller has a real sense of leadership. We've seen that he is a good leader, but we get some of his leadership philosophy, and we can kind of start seeing that he's not just going on instinct here. He's going on principles.
Yeah. All right, and so moving on, the rain begins to fall and is drowned out by gunfire in the distance. I love this transition of the sound effects of the raindrops and the gunfire.
I'm not going to say it reminds me of Bambi, but it reminds me of Bambi.
All right. Well, we've got a Bambi reference in a Saving Private Ryan podcast.
Rewatch it and tell me I'm wrong.
Okay.
Tell me Spielberg was not inspired in some way by that.
Okay. All right. So they come into the town and shout thunder. Someone else responds with flash, and there's some airborne soldiers. Paul Giamatti is our cameo here. There's so many cameos in this film. Okay. Real quick, they did correct this in Band of Brothers, but throughout the movie, characters are screaming thunder, which to identify families, and waiting for a response for flash. But in actuality, the challenge word was flash, and thunder the response word, as thunder was chosen as the password because of its th sound, as there's no such sound in German.
Right.
So like I said, he did fix this in Band of Brothers.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm not sure how they got that off, or if there was, if some people would use it separately, and because soldiers not knowing the reason that it was chosen. But one of the things I like here with Paul Giamatti is there's just a slight level of comic relief, and it's subtle, but it's desperately needed, and it's realistic. And we had the walk and talk with and there's humor there, but after that first 30 minutes of super intense battle, we needed comic relief. And I think that's one thing that makes this movie so attainable, is that it doesn't beat you over the head with the darkness of war, because soldiers needed that comic relief themselves. They were experiencing this hell.
Yeah.
So.
And we get the friendly neighborhood morale officer over the intercom, and he says, the Statue of Liberty is kaput. And I love it. Tom Hanks goes, the Statue of Liberty is kaput. That's disconcerting.
Yeah.
these action scenes have very minimal to no score behind them, which I thought was interesting. So let's just move on to where we. Yep. Mm-hmm. We find out there's a pool going on figuring out where the captain is from and what he did before the war, and it's just because none of his soldiers knew. And they come across a French family as they make their way through town. Upton translates, and the family wants them to take the kids to safety. And against the captain's orders, Caparzo, Vin Diesel's character, takes the little girl. And he says, "Captain, the decent thing to do would be to take her to the next town," which the captain replies, "We aren't here to do the decent thing. We're here to follow fucking orders." And Caparzo is shot out of nowhere. We get a harsh, dissonant piano chord, which is actually organic to the shot because it's caused by Caparzo falling onto a piano in the street, which I thought that's the only score we get.
Yeah.
And here we get the iconic sniper versus sniper as Jackson picks out where he thinks the sniper is and gets ready to take him out.
Right.
Caparzo's still alive, bleeding in the rain, and Mellish pleads with him to keep his head down. Wade, the medic, yells at him to stay still. Caparzo pulls out a letter and he says, "It's to my dad. It's got blood on it, fish." And Jackson says his prayer. And just as the German sniper sees Jackson, he fires a round and the bullet goes through the scope, through the German soldier's eyes.
Yeah.
This is sick. This is just.
I think Mythbusters did a thing on that one, but the thing that really sticks out to me in this is the quote that we aren't here to do the decent thing. And really, it's kind of the stance that most of the squad has is they don't really see the merit in their mission to save Private Ryan. Like this, there's people dying all over what makes Private Ryan so special. And that's it just kind of punctuates more of this theme of well, what is one life really worth? Really, look at everything around you. Look at this family. They just want this father and this mother want to save their children. And like the decent thing would be to save these two children. And he's like, Caparzo saying, "She reminds me of my niece. Like, I can't just let her go." And what happens when he tries to do the decent thing? He gets shot and killed.
It's too late. Caparzo's dead, and our squad is down to 7. And
the other thing here.
No, well, Captain takes the girl, and he brings her back up and says, "That's why we can't take children."
Right. But Caparzo talking about the letter to his dad, as his dying letter, it really kind of puts in perspective why is Caparzo, and they talk about this later, it's like, ain't no Ryan worth this thing, one Caparzo ain't worth 10 Caparzo, or 10 Ryans aren't worth one Caparzo, or whatever the line is. But it's like Caparzo's dad is going to get this letter with the notice of his death. It just punctuates this whole thing of there's so many people who are losing children, and they're on this mission to save one guy, one guy.
So just a quick note about killing a sniper by firing a shot through the other sniper's scope into his eye. It was actually based on a true incident, though not in World War II. It's accomplished by a U.S. Marine, Gunnery Sergeant Carlos Hathcock, during the Vietnam War. Hathcock was a sniper who was being fired at by a concealed North Vietnamese army sniper. He finally managed to catch a glimpse of the man's sniper scope and put a round through it, killing him. The incident pictured in this film is a tribute to Hathcock, who has been regarded as one of the U.S. military's top snipers. So, moving on with the movie, Wade takes the letter from Caparzo's lifeless hands and covers the body in a blanket. As they walk away, Ryman says, fuck Ryan. And they finally find Captain Hamill, played by Ted Danson, but not before accidentally knocking down a brick wall into a room full of Germans. I love this scene. They're just sort of like the standoff, just telling each other to, put the guns down, just drop them, put them down. They're all terrified. They're yelling at each other, and then Captain Hamill's group shoots all the Germans and from the high ground. And like I said, none other than Ted Danson.
Another beautiful cameo.
Right. And we're about to get another one as he says, yeah, we got Private James Ryan. And then up comes a young Nathan Fillion.
Although I don't know if that counts as a cameo because
but if you watch it now, you'll go, oh, this is a cameo.
It's one of those like ensemble casts where like Sean Connery's in The Longest Day. And it's like he wasn't a big name back then. Like it's that kind of thing.
Right. And it's the wrong James Ryan. This is James Frederick Ryan, Minnesota, not James Francis Ryan from Iowa. Man. So they follow several leads to find out where Ryan could be. No one really knows where he could be. Obviously, they airborne dropped all over the place.
Mm-hmm. One of the things though about this is the first man on the ground in Ted Danson's character. Is he a colonel in this or a major?
He's a captain.
Oh, he's another captain.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, I understand what you're doing. Good luck.
Mm-hmm.
And Miller goes like, what? He goes,
yeah.
No, I mean it. Find him, get him home. Like, and you're just like, okay, somebody agrees with this mission. It's nice to see that somebody who is on the ground, who is experiencing this, agrees with the mission, thinks that it's a noble cause.
It is a noble cause in a lot of ways, but
that's called into
lives.
question in the whole film.
Yes. And he believes in this cause, but he's not crazy about Monty, the British general. Patent reference or just the general American officer sentiment that nobody really liked Monty. So they find, the captain gives them a church and they're resting in the church. And here we get a lot of kind of stories from the characters and where someone else notices Miller's hand that's shaking and he questions him about it. They reminisce about Vecchio.
This is Sergeant Horvath.
P of V. Yeah. P of V on everyone's jacket for victory for Vecchio.
Oh, right. No, this one, like, you get a lot of dialogue in this and you learn a lot about your characters. And I really like that Spielberg took the time to just let the characters talk to each other and not try to add anything frou-frou or fancy or try to do it in the middle of an action scene. He just let the characters talk in this very private, intimate sort of thing. And I really like that. And we learn like Captain Miller has lost like 93 men under his command. And he says this Ryan, better be worth it, cure some disease, invent the longer lasting light bulb. And this really brings up the question of what might, at least in Captain Miller's view, make a life more valuable than another.
94, by the way. You said 93. It's 94.
I'm an English teacher. Not numbers are not always my thing.
But this is something I thought was kind of a thing, whatever. But Wade transposing Caparzo's letter from the bloody letter to a clean, neat letter. Again, I feel like this represents washing away the filth and horrors of war. But I think this movie does a good job of representing than a lot of the World War II movies before it. Anyway, yeah, and he says, except this time the man is a mission. The mission is a man.
Right. And this is one of those places where the mystery of Captain Miller's hometown and his occupation is like revisited. And it's really important because we don't know we don't know about him. He's a bit of a mystery. He's not particularly special. And like he was just talking about, you know, that Ryan better cure some disease or invent a longer lasting light bulb. Like we don't get the impression that by Captain Miller's own thinking that his life is worth any more than anyone else's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
go ahead, Josh.
His identity, as in who is he outside of the Army? You know, what does he do? What is his occupation? Where is he from? This is an idea, of course, you know, every man in the military is thinking. They want to know who their leader is. You know, what's so special about you? Why should I follow you? Or show me something. You know, tell me who you are. Why should I think so highly of you and follow you into the depths of hell? And he's a mystery. So we don't learn about him until much later in the film about who he actually is and what he actually does for a job, which makes him extremely special. Because in the midst of all of this, the idea of humanity, all these men are coming from different places throughout the country, and they're all thrown together into a place most of them don't want to be, and a mission that most of them don't want to do. And they're basically trying to complete the impossible, right? And I was telling Jamie earlier, he mentioned a Hobbit reference earlier. But once they storm that hill off of Normandy and they begin their journey and they know what their mission is, to me, it's always seemed kind of like a Lord of the Rings film. This band of group of misfits that are kind of thrown together for one objective that seems kind of ridiculous, but it's worthwhile because, of course, it's going to help many. But in this case, of course, it's only going to help a few, right? The idea of like saving one person, of course, all these people dying around you, they're saving one person. So it is a ridiculous idea, and they're thrown in the midst of this. So they just go off walking, and they learn as they go who they are. So the exposition takes forever, which is where we are right now. They're really starting to learn each other at this point in the story. And I've never seen a war film like this. Every other war film I know, the exposition starts from the beginning. You're introduced one person at a time. You get to learn who they are, where they come from, and then they're thrown into the midst. So this one here is in reverse, and that's what makes it so special to me.
Yeah. And you speak of Lord of the Rings, but this next shot, the squad walking single file across a dark and cloudy sky, intermittently lighting up with artillery firing in the distance, very reminiscent of an adventure film with your fellowship. But I was going to say it's very reminiscent of the Fellowship of the Ring, but this was before Fellowship of the Ring
it's 5
was
years
filmed.
Before.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's only like 3 years before.
But I do want to go back and watch the Ralph Bakshi animation film of Lord of the Rings, because I did begin watching that, and I was like, wow, this intro is almost exactly how the Fellowship of the Ring starts. But anyway, we're getting way off topic. And they come to an airborne camp where they're questioning people about Ryan helping the wounded. This glider pilot is wounded, and he's kind of...
No, he's not a scratch on him. That was his thing.
Oh, but he's hanging out with the wounded.
Right.
But he's kind of the guide. He's kind of their guide through this whole airborne misfit camp. And he tells a story about having to try to fly a glider with steel plates bolted to the bottom to keep a general safe from gunfire. It was like trying to fly a freight train. We were just too damn heavy. 22 guys dead. And Captain Miller says, all that for a general? One man. And then somebody, I think it's Ryman, pops in the window and says, a lot of that going around.
Fubar. Yeah,
y'all got that right. Hey, I looked up Fubar in the German dictionary. There's no Fubar here. Up.
I like that. Like they go, because he's us, and it's like, okay, we're gonna get to finally know what Fubar is, and then it's like up them, go see if
one of them is Ryan.
And you're just like, oh, that's so good. Yeah, like,
and
this is the whole, but the story that the glider pilot tells is like a vignette version of what their story could be, where we had the engineers have put the steel plate on the hull of this very light glider, and then makes it damn near impossible to fly, and it risks the life of everybody on board. But in order to protect the life of this one person, this general, and the mission is so ill-conceived, the protections get everybody killed, along with the person that was deemed, designed to protect. It's like a story that kind of bodes ill for their whole mission. And really, it's in some ways, it's kind of foreshadowing here, but it's also like it's giving the character something that they know this is potentially their own fate, that they are doing something that is so
Fubar.
ill-conceived. Yeah, FUBAR. It's so ill-conceived that it'll get them all killed. So
yeah, our glider pilot gives them a bag of dog tags, and they start searching through them in sort of an awful and desensitized way, spitting on them to clean them, and just laughing and goofing off, carrying on. And Wade, the medic, stops them as he realizes all the airborne is watching them. And Miller goes, maybe we should just go shouting like Hansel and Gretel through the woods.
I want to stop you here though, before you hit the next part, because this dog tag scene is like the most powerful to me. The other than of course the opening scene, which I think is the most powerful to everybody, but we have the squad dealing out dog tags like playing cards or poker chips, and they're not really thinking that each one is representative of a dead airborne soldier who's died within the last 4 or 5 days. So, I mean, even our leader, Captain Miller, is taking part. But it's the medic, Wade, he comes in, breaks it all up, because we see that the airborne, they're marching by, they're disgusted, they're troubled, their faces run the gamut of emotions. And it really shows that Wade, he's the healer. He bears the Red Cross. He's sort of the moral center of the party. And they accept his chastisement and comply. Even Captain Miller, his superior officer, realizes immediately that Wade is right. And the whole casual nature in which the squad's like approaching the dog tags, looking for Ryan's name, it just kind of further highlights how little they believe in the mission. Each dog tag is a life lost. And it's absolutely ridiculous that all of these lives mean a hill of beans, but Ryan's life means so much. And looking at the airborne's glares, like we kind of really get the idea though that these lives do mean something. And Wade's admonition snapped them all out of it. These lives mean something, but even if these lives don't mean anything to them personally, they do mean something to somebody. And I think Wade, as the moral center of the party, really kind of brings them back to reality.
Absolutely. So, moving on, Captain Miller begins shouting through the airborne like Hansel and Gretel through the woods for Ryan, and someone actually knows where he is. A man with a hearing loss, because a grenade went right off next to my head.
I love this guy. And this is more of that comic relief that we need.
Yeah. And they communicate through pen and paper. And we find out that Ryan is in Ramel to babysit a bridge. And
I think this character, this guy who's lost his hearing, I have a feeling that it is somewhat inspired by, it's a slight homage to the paratrooper that was played by Red Buttons in The Longest Day, who loses his hearing because he's like, his parachute hangs up near the church bells that ring all night.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about that.
And I feel like that this is kind of an homage to him. Is not, I don't know, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but I thought of that, and I just want to connect our two favorite World War II films in that way.
I mean, if this echoes to you, then It is what it is. So on their journey, they find some dead airborne soldiers, and Captain Miller decides that they need to take out this MG-42 nest, really against everybody else's gut feelings and advice. And somebody, I forget who it says, "Sir, I don't have a good feeling about this one."
That's Ryben.
And he says, "When was the last time you felt good about anything?" I thought that was just kind of speaking to this whole war, really.
Mm-hmm.
This whole action scene, we don't really get to see what happens. It's seen from Upham's perspective, who's left behind as he watches from cover behind a dead cow through Jackson's sniper scope. And why they run the unarmed medic through this mission as, I guess, a decoy or something.
Draw fire, I think.
Yeah. It gets Wade, our medic, who's played by Giovanni Ribisi, killed. And like I said, why is he there? Like, why not run up him through there? Everybody tries to dress this guy's wound, and they give him a lot of morphine as he cries out for his mama with his dying breath. Truly one of the most heartbreaking death scenes in a war film for me, as this man who was committed to saving lives, not taking them, is killed. And we see him bleeding, and they're salting, or what do they call it, the sulfate or whatever.
Yeah.
And the men in the squad are not happy, obviously.
Well,
and they want to kill the POW they've captured, and instead Miller makes the German and Upham dig the graves for the paratroopers and Wade. And as Captain Miller walks away, he breaks it down into tears.
Right. And
away from all his men in private.
But if you accept my premise that I brought up in the last scene, that Wade is the moral center of the party,
mm-hmm.
then, and he's being tended to by the whole squad. Their hands are all bloody. They are all trying to save him, but they are losing their moral center, literally. And his death marks this extremely dark turn for the party. And what happens immediately upon his death? They turn to vengeance.
Yes. So if you look at the captain as the daddy of the group, your medic is your mom. He's a nurturer. He's the one that takes care of you. And when that person's lost, of course, in the Marine Corps, we have that person, the corpsman, and we protect the corpsman at all costs because he protects us. And he's there for us for whatever issue that we have. And he's the moral center of the group, but he's also the nurturing center of the group. So at this point in time, as someone said it earlier, like, what's the last good idea you had or the last good feeling you've had? They're all gone now. That feeling of support, that nurturing feeling that everything's going to be okay. Somebody's here to make sure that we understand that and make sure that we're all right. That person's gone. And that was a very heartbreaking scene, and I won't lie to you. I think I shed a tear or two that first time I saw it.
Yeah, for sure. I tear up on almost every movie I watch, but this one for sure gets me every time. And
can you hear my daughter crying?
Yes.
Okay.
Hey, I'm gonna take a little break.
Okay. Here, I'm gonna try to pause.
I'm gonna go get some. All right, moving on. Miller. All right, so moving on. They're digging the grave. They're gonna, the German soldier, kind of pleading for his life. And I love America. Betty Grabor, what the cinch? Betty Boop. So and eventually Captain Miller lets him go. He blindfolds him and tells him to walk however many paces, and all hell breaks loose within the squad here. Ryman essentially is about to become a deserter, refuses to. Excuse me. Sergeant Horvath, he kind of threatens to shoot him. I mean, he does. He's got a gun on him. Everybody's yelling and carrying on. And he says, I'm going to shoot you because I don't like you. You don't know when to shut up, kind of thing. And here it is. Captain Miller diffuses the whole thing by asking what the pool was up to on him. 300? Because I'm a school teacher. I teach English composition in this little town called Adley, Pennsylvania. Last 11 years, I've been at Thomas Alva Edison High School. I was the coach of the baseball team in the springtime. Back home, when I tell people what I do for a living, they say, oh, that figures. But over here, it's just a big mystery. So I guess I've changed some. Sometimes I wonder if I've changed so much, my wife is even going to recognize me whenever it is I get back to her, and how I'll ever be able to tell her about days like today. Nah, Ryan, I don't know anything about Ryan. I don't care. The man means nothing to me. He's just a name. But if going to Ramel and finding him so he can go home, if that earns me the right to get back to my wife, well, then that's my mission. You want to leave? You want to go off and fight the war? All right, I won't stop you. I'll even put in the paperwork. I just know that every man I kill, I feel farther away from home I feel.
Yeah.
And Ryman begins to walk away and stop as he stops as he looks back to see his captain burying the dead soldiers. And the squad is now. Oh, sorry. So, what do you guys think? He reveals what he did, who he was before all this.
This, in turn, brings us to our unlikely hero. The guy that everyone looks up to, the so mysterious. Why should we follow you? He's just a school teacher.
An English teacher of 11 years, which I think you and I are
Yes.
literally of 11 years.
Yes.
That is incredible right there.
Yeah.
Both of you guys, huh?
Yeah, we actually started teaching at the same time, different places, but same time.
Wow. Well, I work at the DMV, so anyway, yeah, this is powerful kind of monologue of telling his soldiers who he is.
The most powerful line is, with every soldier I kill, the further away from home I feel.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
and that's one of those war is hell sorts of lines. And it's one that doesn't actually get brought up in this film as the most quotable or the most memorable lines. I mean, there's so many good lines in this film, but that one right there is really poignant for a war movie in general. And in some ways, it's one of those war movie lines that's an anti-war movie line.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And all right, the squad is now moving through a fields of dandelions. Mel is just singing softly as the score begins to build, and they hear a half track coming. They take cover, and someone is shooting a bazooka rounds at the half track. Who's doing the shooting? Not them. They don't know who's shooting at it. They take out the German soldiers, and the 101st Airborne announces themselves. And one by one, they introduce themselves, and we have Matt Damon as Private Ryan. I think this is so perfect how they just stumble upon him here. And now we're in Ramel. It really is just a ragtag group of paratroopers holding this bridge, and Miller explains why they're there, that they are not their reinforcements, and that they're here for Ryan. And Ryan doesn't want to go. He doesn't want to abandon his post. Ryman cuts in and tells him, hey, asshole, 2 of our guys died already trying to find you. And it doesn't make any sense. Why do I get to go? Why not any of these guys? And Miller says, is that what they're supposed to tell your mother when they hand her another folded American flag? And I love this. He says, tell her that when you found me, that I was here with the only brothers I have left, and that there was no way I was going to desert them. There's no way I'm leaving this bridge.
Ryan doesn't even believe in the mission.
No, he doesn't.
That's
Eh,
that you get a sinking feeling in your stomach for the guys that have died trying to find this guy, and he doesn't even want to fucking go.
Yeah. And you have this group of guys that have seen hell for days and days now looking for this guy, and they've lost some of their own. They're down on their luck. They finally find him. Their mission's over. They can bring him back and have a little peace, you know? And he doesn't want to leave. And he's fresh and he's ready to fight and he wants to stay. And I just thought that was hilarious once I found out that Spielberg had put the rest of the men through boot camp, except for Damon, because he was fresh when he got to the set, and everybody else was like, you know, dude, really?
Yeah. So this is, I think, my favorite scene, non-battle scene of the film. And Sergeant Horvath, Tom Sizemore, he says, if he wants to stay, fine, let's leave him and go home. But another part of me thinks that what if by some miracle we stay and actually make it out of here? Someday he might look back at this and decide that Saving Private Ryan was the one decent thing we were able to pull out of this whole god-awful shitty mess. Like you said, Captain, we do that, we all are in the right to go home. Bruh.
Captain also said, we're not here to do the decent thing.
Yeah. So there's a lot of, you know, mixed ideologies in here that some don't believe in the mission, even though they say they do, but it just kind of slips out. It just slips out of Captain Miller. He, the whole time, he's projecting to his men that he believes in this mission, that they're doing a good thing.
Right.
But he slips out. It slips out of his mouth. Like, when's the last time you felt good about anything? He doesn't feel good about this mission. And what's the other one? You just said it, dude.
Oh, well, I don't know. I say a lot of things.
Anyway, so they actually decide to stay and help and defend the bridge and babysit Private Ryan. The lead up to the battle, we have various battle preparations. We and the rest of the soldiers learn what a sticky bomb is to knock the tracks off a tank. Use a standard issue GI sock, cram it with as much Comp B TNT as it can hold, rig up a simple fuse, and coat the whole thing in axle grease. That way, when you throw it, it should stick. Actually, British and German soldiers actually had issue sticky bombs, but they came with some drawbacks like sticking to your trousers and you couldn't get them off.
Oh, I did not know that.
So this whole thing later on, when we see soldiers exploding, running toward a tank with one, that's sort of this whole thing. We get funny conversations. Upham translates an old Edith Piaf song. Ryben tells a story of a busty woman back home. You know, when you're scared, think of these, and you'll be back home. And Ryan tells a story
that actually
about,
works, you know.
Yeah, boobs. They just save everything.
Well, no, actually, it does. There is something about that psychologically. It's thinking of breasts and doing math. It will, and one is much more fun than the other.
1 + 1 equals boobs.
It's supposed to relieve inhibitions.
Anyway, Ryan, Private Ryan tells a story about the last night all his brothers were together, which Matt Damon actually ad-libbed, and it was so unfunny that Spielberg felt it fit and kept it in. And Ryan asked to hear about Miller's wife and those rose bushes, and he says, "No, that one I'll save just for me." Dude, rewatching this, I couldn't help but think about the last time we see Captain America, Steve Rogers. He's like, "You tell me about tell me about it," and he's like, "No, I don't think I won't."
I don't think I will.
Yeah. So in these build up to the last battle, we also get Mellish teaches Upham what foobar means in a sort of, he just kind of says it. He goes, "Fucked up beyond all recognition." And then he's like, "Yeah." And Upham's kind of like, "Yeah." And then he looks at him and goes, "Foobar." He's like, God dang it. Just sort of like, dang it. Anyway. And then, okay, so after he says, after Private Ryan, after Private Ryan tells his story and asks to hear about Miller's wife, they hear German tanks coming in the distance. And they look up to Jackson, who's in the bell tower, and he kind of gives them signals to let them know what's coming. And Ryman kind of takes off as bait on the rabbit with his BAR rifle. And this last battle is, I think, seriously, one of the best action set pieces in all of film. I mean, the beginning of the movie is just in a whole thing by itself, right?
Right.
But this last battle is just full of heartbreak and anguish because we actually know these characters now. In the beginning, it was nameless soldiers dying left and right, but now we actually know these characters, and there are these heroic moments and actually some pretty ghastly blunders. And the death of some of the characters you really came to love, and the actual frustrations with some of the characters and the actions or the lack thereof from Upham mainly.
Yeah,
until the end.
With
What?
Mellish.
We'll get to it.
And the knife
We'll get
fight.
to it.
Oh, we're getting to it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that we're
the
getting
American
to it later.
soldiers. American soldiers here are the underdog for sure. And the Germans outnumbered them and outgunned them. And you kind of feel like the Americans have an advantage until that 20 mil rolls up and just starts picking them off of the tank. And you just see their heads like popping off. And then you're like,
I thought it was a 50 cal.
No, it's a 20 mil. It's like caliber is smaller than
okay.
Whatever.
So it's even bigger than that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because I mean, it's shooting things like huge bullets. And Jackson is in a bell tower just sniping people left and right, and he can't quite get that 20 mil, but he's still sniping people that are coming off of one of these little tanks. And he's killed by a tank shelling the bell tower as he kind of goes out in a blaze of glory. So Mellish here is one of the 30 cal machine gun positions, and they're running out of ammo, and their Germans kind of overrun them there. He died. This is one of the most visceral death scenes in any movie. And as a German soldier, speaks to him in German, says, "Give up. You don't stand a chance. Let's end this here. It will be easy for you, much easier. You'll see it will be over quickly." And these words are spoken in German and not translated. So this is a rough translation from somebody online, but Upham not coming up to save him is one of the most irksome moments in this movie. And you wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, this one's hard. It's hard to watch, and it's one of those things that makes this film hard to rewatch. And the Upham's cowardice, it hasn't changed, and we kind of expected a growth in the character, and his growth comes more intellectually. It doesn't come with more bravery. He doesn't change in that regard, and it's frustrating. And we expect it, we hope it, we expect that he's going to come in and change at the last minute. And the fact of the matter is that some people don't. And it's like, it just reminds me of, what makes one life more valuable than another. And this whole mission has been to save one life. And he hasn't really expressed any doubts about the mission in and of itself. And he won't go in and save the one life he can save.
He's actually built a rapport with Mellish here.
Right.
He is, I mean, when he first tries to talk to Mellish, he says, like, watch out with those filthy little rat claws, but now they kind of have a heartfelt moment, and he tells him what foobar means, and he doesn't save him here. And
Yeah, he tends to choose his own life out of fear. Can't quite make that jump into that next level. He's standing there on the stairwell. He has a weapon. He can go inside and he can stop what's happening, but the fear, the unknown, possible death, he couldn't make it happen. And cowers on the stairwell as the German soldier passes him by, hoping and praying that he doesn't get hurt in the process. And of course he wasn't.
He even holds his hand up, like off of the trigger, like, I'm not going to kill you, and he's crying. So I think the German has some humanity here, and just kind of peeks around, like, is everything clear? And he just kind of walks off.
And it sucks for me watching that scene. Every single time I watch it, I hate it because I end up having more respect for the German than I do for Corporal Upham.
And I think that's purposeful of the filmmakers, who are saying, like, this is not so simple as good and evil here. Yes. The German soldiers are humans too. Like I talked about this in our World War II draft, but whether or not these Nazi soldiers bought into that ideology and hated everyone and, were just killing for the sport of it because they hated everybody else and they believed in this cause, a lot of them just got spun up and doing their duty. Yeah. Right. So it's super purposeful that you feel that way and you don't like Upham in this moment specifically. So the battle ensues, they're kind of babysitting Ryan throughout the whole thing, but they run out of ammo and they begin to use mortar shells by hand, which apparently critics said was unrealistic, which in fact, Medal of Honor recipient Charles Kelly actually did this in a battle in Italy in 1943, which I thought was interesting.
Nice.
But they begin to fall back to the Alamo, which they titled one building that's across the bridge so that they can blow the bridge up in case they were overrun. The Germans cannot take this bridge, which is the entire kind of plan behind this whole battle. And Sergeant Horvath is shot by soldiers as he's trying to hold off a tank with a bazooka. Captain Miller is shot by a soldier. The soldier he let go earlier.
I didn't.
While he's trying to blow up the bridge. Yeah, he's trying to blow up the bridge, and he's shot by the soldier the POW he freed at the that satellite tower. And this scene is epic. The last stand with the Colt 45 taking slow shots at a tank as it approaches, which it explodes as the planes fly overhead.
That is that is iconic.
Yeah. Upham finally, I want to say, gains some courage here, but maybe not. He kills the man they previously let go. He kills the same guy, and the guy apparently says, like, I know this man, something, and he just shoots him and then lets everybody else go. But he sees him. He's hiding, and he sees that guy kill Captain Miller, someone who he looks up to. And Ryman tries to patch up Captain Miller as reinforcements arrive. He calls for a medic. As Miller dies, he tells Ryan, James, earn this. Earn it. And the tremor in Captain Miller's hand finally ceases. And Ryman gets the Caparzo letter here. Man, this last battle, like I said, it's very heart-wrenching. There's a lot of moments in here that really tear you up because you have come to know these characters and you care about them and even love them in some respects. And like you said, you hate some of them as well.
Yeah, I think Ryben is one of the least likable of the original squad, though somewhat relatable in challenging the whole mission in general. But I think one of the things that this really brings together for the audience is you have just lost almost the entire cast of characters you've been following in order to save the life of this one Private Ryan whom you just met and you don't really have much affection for. And so, like, really, it's in some ways, it's really testing the audience, and it brings it back to the theme is how much is one life worth? And it really challenges the audience to say, was Private Ryan's life worth the lives of Captain Miller, of Mellish, of Caparzo, of Wade, and
Jackson,
and
Horvath.
Jackson and Horvath? What really was it?
You get two of the 7 or 8 are left. You get Ryben,
whom you don't particularly like.
I like him. I don't know, but whatever. But and the other one you get is Upham,
whom very few people might identify with because you're a fish out of water, but
right,
you don't like him at this point because because of what he's not done.
Yeah, and so the monologue letter as we exit this scene is from George C. Marshall to Mrs. Ryan. And we get the sort of transformation of the Private Ryan, Matt Damon, into the old man from the beginning. And we find out that we are seeing what Ryan perceived happened. And he says he's standing at Captain Miller's cross. He says, "My family is with me today. They wanted to come with me. To be honest with you, I wasn't sure how I'd feel coming back here. Every day I think about what you said to me on that bridge, and I've tried to live my life the best I could. I hope that was enough. I hope that, at least in your eyes, I've earned what you all have done for me." And he looks at his wife and he says, "Tell me I've led a good life. Tell me I'm a good man." And she's like, "What?"
Thanks for breaking that up. I'm about to I'm starting to tear up with that.
She's just so out of it. Like what? Yes, you're a good man, and then walks off. Just I'm like, well, that was out of place for me. And we zoom in on the white cross that says Captain John H. Miller, and the film closes out the same way it opens on that flag, the American flag. And I feel like this is sort of definitely an American perspective of World War II, but it also kind of shares what it means to be an American. And powerful film in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and the feelings, of course, you get from that old man at the end of the film are a lot different than what you thought at the beginning of the film. You see him approaching those crosses and looking at, and then, of course, you flash to the war, and you think it's all about the horrors of gunfire and death and whatnot. But it's also about the idea of how I live my life. We don't know much about his actual life once he left the war. But when he asked his wife, "Am I a good man? Have I lived a good life? Who am I as a person, as a human being? Am I worth it?" And he's struggling with the ideas that all these men died for him and sacrificed themselves so he could get home. Was it worth it? Am I worth it? And that's something a lot of servicemen struggle with, especially after leaving long conflicts. Seeing your friends and whatnot die in front of you. It's something to struggle with for the rest of your life, and that's a powerful moment.
Yeah. All right. Well, before we share our final thoughts, I'm gonna hit you with some film facts. I've kind of peppered them throughout, but I'm gonna hit you with some more. This film lost the Best Picture Oscar controversially to Shakespeare in Love.
Boo.
Boo. Yeah, we don't.
That's not an indictment of Shakespeare in Love, but
I've heard it's a great film, but
it's a
this has been
robbery.
named one of the greatest Oscar controversy in history of the award show. It's, many people have attributed the latter's win to its producer, Harvey Weinstein, who incessantly lobbied for his movie, Shakespeare in Love, with the Academy of voters while attacking this film for its historical inaccuracies. Hey, Harvey Weinstein, guess what? We're in a rated R podcast. I can say, fuck you.
Thank you.
All right. So this movie is also inspired by the true story of the Nealon brothers. We're not going to go into all that history, but look it up. But it seems like I've peppered the rest of my film facts throughout the entire podcast. So that's it.
Okay.
But yeah. So I think he did win for Best Director, though, which is well deserved here. I don't think anybody won for Best Actor, which is kind of a shame, but whatever.
I think Tom Hanks did an amazing job here.
Absolutely.
He's
very consistent.
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
I mean, there's enough. The thing I've always liked about Tom Hanks, and you wouldn't think of him as being a good war lead, because he's not your Arnold Schwarzenegger, he's not your Sylvester Stallone.
But that's not who he is.
Well, no, that's not who he is, but that's
the teacher.
Right. Well, that's not the whole point of his character is that he's so many Tom Hanks movies are everyman. He's an everyman kind of guy. He's relatable. He looks like a normal guy. That's always been part of his charm. He's a great actor, but in this case, he is not this macho war hero. He's a school teacher, and that was really the kind of person who was a soldier, not and an officer, would have at this level would not have been a career military man for at this scale, because we had so many more sailors, soldiers, Marines, airmen who were needed for this kind of war, this total war.
Yeah.
So I love that he is.
But a lot of these people
he's our
were
war
drafted.
band lead.
Yeah, a lot of the it kind of goes to these soldiers were not career military; they were drafted. A lot of them.
There were a lot of volunteers, though.
A lot of volunteers, but a lot of them were drafted.
Yeah, we don't hear as much about the draft in World War II as we do in like Vietnam, where there was less faith in the war.
But
Vietnam's
a whole different.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
But the draft was active. That people were anyway.
Yeah.
We could talk about the legacy of this film. It definitely still holds up. And after this, Spielberg and Hanks produced Band of Brothers, and then subsequently The Pacific for HBO, two outstanding miniseries that really just in themselves can just blow you away every episode. And like you said, Josh, that's one that they introduce you to the soldiers one by one. You get to know them before they parachute into hell. Unlike this film, where you're just thrown into it and introduced to them on the fly. And with that being said, let's hear you guys' final thoughts on Saving Private Ryan.
Josh, you want to go ahead?
It's just an extremely emotionally draining experience for me. I was telling Jamie when I came over this evening that I hadn't seen this movie in probably 6 years, and I've only seen the movie a handful of times throughout my life. And I was there during opening week. I saw it when it first came out, and I was about 2 years removed from graduating boot camp, and our guest speaker, a general, gave this speech to the audience. He said, "I'm going to give you an image of two Marines. One image, of course, is the Marine that you see today standing on this parade deck. They're wearing their uniform. Their boots are shined, their shoes are glossed, their uniforms are set up to a T. Everything's done correctly. They're here for show. They're here to show you who they will be, who they can be. But then he switched to another story of a bunch of Marines at the bottom of a ship about to embark upon a mission. Gunfire is coming down range, and they're facing near death when they leave that ship. And the images and the feelings that he gave that day sent shivers down my spine as I stood there on the parade deck. And those first 5 minutes of that gunfire on that beach brought every single one of those emotions back. And I feel it every single time I watch it. And the idea, I'm 43 years old, and I'm starting to feel those ideas of what that old man is thinking about his life, what he's meant to other people. Has he done the right things? Has he done good in this life for his wife, for his children, for his grandchildren? So I can start to relate to that idea now too. So that's what I took away from it the last time I watched it, was I started thinking about my own life after the credits rolled. In my 43 years, what have I really done in this life? And, what else could I do? Have I done enough in this life? Has it been worth it? That one human life, that one person, have I been worth it yet? Have I done enough? And it's just an emotional roller coaster.
I'm not following that.
Yeah, dude.
I
How are we
think
supposed
that
to
sums
follow
it
that?
up. And that, what is one life worth? That's it.
I do want to cover another aspect of what this film is trying to say, is that the juxtaposition of what war was actually like, and then the washing of it clean, which I kind of talked about throughout, but the washing of it clean for the home front. We get, the typists typing out the ladies typing out all the deaths and, the condolence letters. And that's basically all they get. They don't get to actually know what happened there. There's no, like Josh saying, there's no real film footage of what happened there. And a lot of those guys who had cameras died really early. And then, that camera's ruined by the ocean. But this movie, Spielberg changes the landscape of World War II movies in general. A lot of what we got on the home front, a lot of the movies we got were very desensitized, very, not sort of war films that were kind of war as hell. World War II films, because Vietnam era films, the stuff that followed the Vietnam era, were very anti-war, speaking up about this war that we should have never been in, right? But World War II movie, World War II was a war that we were fighting for something. We were fighting an evil. We were fighting a superpower that was trying to take over the world. But everybody that made movies about it were just kind of washing it clean and just tell what happened, just to tell a little bit of like historical things. Like Longest Day is just like, this is how grand this whole thing was. This is the scope of it all. This one dials it in and it tells you these guys' story. It's historical fiction, yes, but the beginning of this film changes war movies forever. And even the same year we get The Thin Red Line, and it is very visceral experience, but it ain't this.
No.
And to me, you'll never see anything like this again. And you've never seen anything like this beforehand. So I just think, I think a lot about this movie, obviously, but man, incredible film, incredible performances from everybody. I think this is Spielberg at the top of his game. And seriously, Jamie, do you have anything to say?
No, I think y'all covered it. And I think I covered most of what I needed to say throughout the deep dive, throughout the scene by scene. So no, but I will just part with this question to our audience. What is one life worth? Watch the film, ask yourself the question, and see if you can answer it. I don't think that the film answers, it's not preachy. It doesn't answer the question for you, but it poses it, and it gives
Yeah.
you a lot of different sides, and it lets you make your own call. What is one life worth?
Yeah, man. All right. Well, thank you guys for listening. We hate to leave you on this sort of pondering note, but
I
this
don't.
movie definitely, movie definitely called for it. It's
Yes,
not
it does.
it's not some happy ending. You know, a lot the characters we love don't survive mostly, and we just want to send a heartfelt gratitude to all the soldiers that have served. Josh, thank you to you and all of our veterans. And thanks for joining us on this discussion.
Awesome. Thank you guys for having me today.
Sweet. All right. Well, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that stuff at Cine-Siblings Pod. Give us a review on Apple Podcasts. Like and subscribe to us on any of your favorite podcast thingy things. And Jamie, sign us out, buddy.
Ooh, this has been the Cine-Siblings podcast. I'm James.
I'm Ian.
And I'm Josh.
Thank you for listening, everybody.
And until then, watch an old movie.
Watch a new movie, baby.